Hey guys, I'll be finishing my reviewing marathon with a colorful looking and colorful sounding DAC amp combo from xDuoo, which is called Poke 2. I liked a lot of things about this one, but a few things weren't that impressive, which I'll tell you in a minute. Let's have a look at this one, then what's inside it, and then how it sounds. Let's go. It caters for a younger generation of audiophiles. As you can see, it's quite colorful. It has some cool graphics, and not only that, because they are advertising it to be used with gaming consoles as well, thanks to that UAC1 standard for movie watching, for music listening on the go. So you'll be deciding what you'll be doing with this one. Those colorful graphics are located under a sheet of glass on its front and back, and everything else is made from machined aluminum, so I believe its build quality is quite high. It has smooth edges and rounded corners, and it's in line with the newest xDuoo devices. When it comes to controls, I don't know why they felt it's a great idea going with 8 buttons all around its case. It's a little bit confusing, and I need to constantly look what every button is doing more exactly. And another small disappointment is, of course, that very small 0.9-inch OLED screen. In sunny days, bright sunny days, good luck seeing what is being displayed on this one. You cannot change its brightness. And of course, when working as a Bluetooth receiver, sitting from 2 meters away, again, you cannot see what's being displayed on this one. In their stead, I will go with 3 buttons, with on-off volume buttons, and put a bigger display. And of course, a much nicer UI. That's what I would do with Poke 3. With its buttons, you can change its gain position, digital filter, enable or disable a few equalizer presets, enter Bluetooth pairing mode, change volume position, and of course power it on or off. There's a regular 3.5mm and 4.4mm balanced jacks and 2 USB Type-C inputs, one used for charging and the other one to be used as a USB DAC amp combo for your smart devices. As for tech inside it, xDuoo went with 2 flagship DAC chips of Cirrus Logic, which are known to be quite musical, quite smooth sounding. They went slightly overkill with its digital section because it has 3 crystal oscillators and also an Altera Max 2 FPGA that can be usually spotted in higher performance desktop DACs. There's an XMOS receiver on board that will take care of its USB input and MQA playback because it can be used as an MQA renderer as well. There are several high current op-amps of analog devices used in a fully balanced configuration. So yes, this is a fully balanced unit from input to output, and it can provide 700 milliwatts of power on its balanced output, which is quite a lot considering its very slim profile and very small size, making it a perfect companion for your portable and desktop headphones. Okay guys, this is pretty much it, so let's hit some eardrums. Before telling you a lot about this one, let's zoom out just a little bit and let's talk about xDuoo, because I believe they are doing things quite differently. So after trying every single hi-fi maker from China, I know exactly the thinking behind their products. I know exactly what they are doing with all their products. And I believe that xDuoo is doing things quite differently. While others are putting a huge accent on measurements, they are putting less accent on the act of music listening. But xDuoo is doing things completely different, so they are putting a much higher accent on the act of music listening and less so on the measurements. Secondly, while others are trying to economize and use some less impressive components, maybe some generic components in their devices, making them as cheap as possible, xDuoo always went with higher performing and higher quality components, so they are choosing higher quality capacitors. If they can, they'll be using transistors instead of op-amps, and that can be seen in many of the devices. They are using better volume control chips. They are using better power supply implementations. If they can, they'll be using linear transformers instead of some switching power supplies. So they are certainly putting a much bigger accent on the component selection, and that can be felt and heard while listening to the devices. And lastly, I see them mostly as music lovers first and then as audio engineers later on. Sound-wise, Pogue 2 feels like a breath of fresh air from a sea of instrument-grade DAC amp combos. And while it's quite transparent, it's quite clean, it's quite detailed, I believe that there is a much bigger accent put on the act of music listening. So this one is full-bodied, this is smooth, this is powerful in the bass and mid-range while just gently rolling off parts of the upper treble. While many brands from China don't have an actual house sound, I believe that xDuoo has a very similar, very powerful house sound in a way, because all their devices are sounding pretty much the same. And by that I mean very musical, very smooth, sweet sounding. And while, being an audiophile for more than half of my life, I appreciate both philosophies, being super technical and super musical. But lately I'm more impressed by by disconnecting from my music. I just want to feel great while listening to music, and I believe that Pogue 2 is doing that very, very easily, always trying to impress with its musicality and mood-lifting performance. When it comes to power output, 700 milliwatts of power on its balanced out is a lot of power considering its very slim profile, its very small size. All the latest generation of Bluetooth gizmos don't have as much power. Some of the latest portable digital audio players don't have as much power, so meaning that it's a very powerful unit considering the size. So I went directly on its 4.4 jack, on its high gain, and it was easily driving a pair of Kenneth and Rogner. Odyssey LCD5, RZH4 was at around 70, maybe 75 out of 100, so leaving plenty of headroom. It was never distorting, it was always fun, engaging, so I felt that it was fully driving those headphones. With something like Sennheiser HD800S, I was maybe at around 75, maybe 80, I couldn't go higher than that, it was very loud, so it can drive even high impedance dynamic headphones. Suggesting that it can drive every portable headphone, IEM, and even plenty of desktop headphones, no problem. The only headphones that it will not drive fully would be very low sensitivity planar magnetic headphones like HiFiMan Susvara, LCD4, like Abyss AB1266, but it wasn't really designed for such headphones, so it's not a big deal. And in the end, I'm very pleased with its headphone amplifier section because I believe it's a very, very good one. As for noise floor, these guys aren't mentioning a noise floor in microvolts, meaning that I'll need to test it myself the old-fashioned way. So I went directly on its 4.4 jack, high gain with a pair of ultra-sensitive IEMs, and at my usual listening volume, there was anything playing in the background, so it was simply dead silent, no gremlins, no nothing, just amazing performance. When I was going much louder, close to maximum or just maximum volume with Music Compose, of course, because nobody can listen to music at that volume, there was just a little bit of hiss playing in the background, but that's not a big deal. Nobody can listen to music at that volume. But there's a much big improvement, a huge improvement versus their XD05 balanced that was way too loud and way too fast with IEMs. What was 10 out of 100 volume-wise is right now at around 50 out of 100, so I have a much higher freedom on that volume wheel, which is just amazing with IEMs. So in the end, this is a very IEM-friendly DAC amp combo, and I believe it's a perfect companion with all types of IEMs. The absolute biggest shock that I had with Pogue 2 was in terms of soundstage and depth. So this one is quite a big, airy sounding unit. It was already quite spacious on filter 1, but on filter 2 it was just decompressing my music. It was simply holographic sounding on filter 2, much closer to their XD05 balanced. So in my opinion, it sounds bigger, it sounds wider, deeper compared to DAPs below 1 grand, and I know that's a big statement, but that's exactly how Pogue 2 appears in terms of soundstage. With some of my desktop headphones, I was getting that out-of-body experience, so going way past my shoulder level. with notes playing in my close vicinity. So this is quite a big sounding unit. And if you like your soundstage wide, deep and tall, then this thing will impress you right away. Another showstopper for me was its very nasty attitude. While I've heard much faster sounding DAC Amp combos, more technical, more precise, more detailed sounding units, those units were not that impressive when delivering powerful bass hits. But this one is almost brutal at times when delivering all those bass hits. It's very punchy sounding in the bass. While I don't find it slow or muddy sounding, it's definitely slower compared to, say, portable headphone amplifier by Topping. It's slower than FiiO digital audio players, it's slower than Shining digital audio players, but it's punchier sounding in the bass compared to all those. Its bigger brother was even more brutal in this regard, even punchier sounding with electronica tunes, and I believe that Poke 2 goes with the same philosophy, so it's quite impressive in terms of bass slam. Not so much in terms of speed, but in terms of kick and impact, yes, this one will impress. It's super punchy, almost raw sounding at times, but I personally like that change of pace versus all those ethereal and lightweight sounding portable digital audio players of late. In terms of detail retrieval, some people might prefer an uber detailed presentation that puts a super high accent on sharp leading edges, on sharp contour of the notes, while others might prefer a more relaxed presentation that is not doing that. And I believe that Poke 2 is exactly like that. So it's not putting a huge accent on small intricacies, small details. You'll be the final judge to look and hear all those details or not. On the other hand, it just distresses yourself, your mind, and lets you focus on the big picture, on the act of music listening itself. So this is quite a forgiving sounding unit. It gently rolls off part of the upper treble, especially on the filter 1. On the filter 2, it felt slightly more detailed sounding. It was getting a little bit more treble energy. But in any case, on any filter, it was never bright, it was never adding any kind of listening fatigue. Trying it out as a Bluetooth receiver, this is probably the biggest con that I have with Poke 2, as at around 4 to 5 meters in an open space, it was dropping quite a few sounds, quite a few beats. It was happening very often with 24-bit PCME files and less so with 16-bit PCME files, but still it was not really great. With a concrete wall, just forget about listening to this one as a Bluetooth receiver. It didn't work that well. I'm sorry to disappoint, but it didn't work that great as a Bluetooth receiver, especially at a few meters away from this one. But staying close to it, if I'm putting it in my pocket, then I no longer have those issues anymore. As for frequency response, Poke 2 is a bass lover's dream. It's very impactful, it's mean, it's so hard slamming in the bass, it's so fun. It can be a little too much with electronica tunes, but it's always very fun and I cannot get enough of that bass definition. It's ballsy, it's mean, and that's what I like about it. Moving forward, you'll be getting a soft and velvety sounding mid-range. It's very warm, it's sweet, full-bodied, it puts a higher accent on the vocal performance, on string-based instruments. It does resemble the sound of well-made hardware converters. It was never thin or lively sounding, and it worked simply exceptionally well with linear or bright sounding headphones, making them a lot more natural, a lot more organic sounding. Treble is no longer sharp as it was on xD05 balanced, but you can certainly make it sharper with that filter 2 if you please. On filter 1 it was quite extended, but at some point I feel that it rolls off parts of the upper treble, so it's definitely a little gentler sounding on this one. On any filter position it lacks any kind of grain or listening fatigue, so you'll never find that unnatural, excessive treble ringing with this one. It decays softly and very gently, and that creates a sensation of a very smooth and relaxed treble performance. In the end, I didn't like its busy layout, its small display, its limited Bluetooth coverage wasn't really appreciated. Apart from this, I really liked its fun sound signature, its big soundstage, its mean and impactful attitude, especially in the bass and mid-range. This is a warm and fun sounding unit that fully drove a wall of headphones. It didn't add any kind of noise or distortion with ultra-sensitive IEMs. It has high-quality components, and that was reflected in its price point, but if it's worth it or not, I will leave you to decide. Okay folks, I hope you enjoyed my review. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as usual, listen to more tunes, be positive, and I'll see you soon. Cheers!